In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to go from knowing nothing inside of FL Studio to feeling comfortable putting together your own song in under 20 minutes. If you follow along with each step, you'll know everything that you need to create your own amazing song. Now, I'd love to promise you that as soon as you make this song, it'll get out into the interwebs and you'll have millions of people that flock to you and you'll become an amazing superstar. I'd be lying to you if I told you that that's how it would go down, but if you do get internet famous from it, please just remember me. Now let's jump in. So I've opened up FL Studio and I am working in the producer edition. To get the same window that I'm looking at right now, all you have to do is press F12 and that should shut down every other window except for the channel rack. So when you're starting out, there's about 4 windows that you need to be paying attention to because these are the windows that you're going to be working in pretty much all the time. And they are the channel rack, which you can bring up by pressing F6. So you can take it away by pressing F6 or bring it up by pressing F6. There's the playlist window, which is if you bring up F5 or if you press F5, that'll bring that one up or take it down. And there's the piano roll if you press F7. And then there is the mixer. And these all kind of work together in order to help you produce a song. So the channel rack is kind of like the menu of everything that you're putting into your song. So it's all the different ingredients. So there could be audio files, there could be MIDI patterns and scores and all kinds of other stuff like that. There can be effects, there can be automations will show up in here as well. And all of these ingredients you will use when you actually jump into the playlist. You will use those to actually create the songs. So you'll see here, there's the pattern window, the audio clips window, and then the automations window. And as you build out your patterns, as you record audio, as you do automations, all of those things will show up on this side in the playlist window. And then you'll notice that over here on the channel rack, there are these numbers. And these numbers are related to the actual mixer track. So for instance, this sampler, which doesn't have any audio in it right now, is routed to track 1, insert 1 on the mixer track. And that insert, all of these inserts go into the master track. So any number that you put in on this left side will be the same number that you're using in the mixer track. So if you leave it blank, it just means that thing is going directly into the master track on the mixer. So let's shut down the mixer window real quick. And let's just focus on the channel rack for a second. So the first thing that we're gonna do, I'm gonna show you how to drag in samples so that you can create a drum loop or put together a drum kit so that you can create a drum pattern for your song. So we'll come over here to this menu on this left side, which is the browser window. If it's not open for you immediately when you came in, you can press Alt and F8 and that will bring that window up or down. And then we'll go down to packs. We'll go to drums. I'm just gonna go into kicks really quickly. I'm gonna grab this one. So that's the 22-inch kick. If you want to audition the samples, you can use your up and down arrows inside this left side. And if you wanna continue to audition it, you can use your right arrow. And then I'm gonna grab a kick or a snare. I'm left clicking and dragging, and then I'm making sure that the green line is showing underneath of the sample that I already pulled in, and that's gonna drop the new sample in there. Because if you don't do that, if you drag it and put it on top of something, it's gonna replace whatever's in there. So now, that sound's in there. If I were to drag this one in there and drop it, now it's that one. So just make sure you pay attention to that. If you drag something in that you don't want anymore, you can press Alt and Delete together. And that will ask you if you want to delete the selected channel. You hit OK, and that will remove that channel. So right now we have a kick and a snare. Let's grab a little hi-hat. All right, I like that one. Let's grab that one, and let's grab maybe a little bit of percussion, something for percussion. All right, let's grab one of these. I'm gonna turn the volume down. So the volume is on this side. That's just one of the ways that you can control volume, but if you also put it into the mixer track, let's say on track 4, if I do that, I can also control the volume by using this over here. So I'm just controlling the volume using this knob right now, but there's multiple ways that you can control the volume for the samples. So let's go ahead and put each one of these into their own mixer track. So this one is in channel 1, this one's in channel 2, this one's in channel 3, this one's in channel 4. So the way that I create a pattern is I use these buttons. It's basically set up to where it counts based on the BPM, it'll be the 1. So it's 1, and then it has subdivisions 2, 3, 4, and you can continue on the pattern as far as you want. So it gives you by default just a 4 count for the pattern. So let's go ahead and put in kick and a snare. All right, so let's listen to what we got. So we're in pattern mode. We're gonna press the play button. All right, so this is really fast and I wanna cut this tempo down. So I'm gonna use this right here, which is the tempo control for the song. So I'm gonna bring this down to maybe like 105. And you can put whatever tempo you wanna operate in. So it'll loop automatically if you do that, but if you start clicking into where it's a little lighter gray, it's gonna create another 4. All right, so now let's say that I want to go ahead and fill in every other for this hi-hat. If I right click on it, I can choose this fill in 2 steps, and that's just going to automatically fill that in for me. And then let's say I want to do something a little different. I want to do fill in each 4 steps for the wood block. I'm going to turn that volume down. So now this is what we have at the moment. All right, so we've created our very first pattern for drums. So let's say that we want to create a second pattern and we want to maybe change some things up. So I'm going to come over here. This is the pattern window. I'm going to use this left drop down window or left drop down arrow. And I'm going to say clone it. And what that means is I want to make a copy of what I just created. So now you'll see that this says pattern 2 and it's the same thing. So if I move back to pattern 1, you'll see it's the same here. I move to pattern 2, it's the same here. So maybe this time I want to take out every other one of these so it's just on the floor, on the on the counts, on the 1, the 2, 3, and the 4. So I right click in order to take away one of those samples or one of those where it hits at. All right, so now we have 2 distinct drum patterns. We have this first one, and then we have this second pattern. I'm starting to wish I didn't use that wood block. It's kind of annoying me, but we'll just work with it. So then if we go out to this playlist window, you'll see that we have pattern 1 and pattern 2. And this is important because when we get into the playlist mode, we can actually put in the patterns that we want to do in order. So I could say I want to play pattern 1 first, and then I want to play pattern 2, and then I want to play pattern 1 again, and then I want to play pattern 2. And if I try to just press spacebar right now just to go ahead and play that, you see there's nothing really happening over here because I'm in the pattern mode right now. So it is looking at this pattern right here and just playing this pattern. So if I want to play what's in the playlist, I have to switch over to the song mode. So I can press this song button right here, or I can press L on my keyboard, and that will switch me over to the song mode. So now you'll see this green arrow shows up in the top left. And now when I press the space bar, it's going to play through the start of this arrangement that I've made. All right, so we've created a basic drum pattern. Let's call that this is maybe the verse 1 structure for the song. So now we want to try to create maybe an instrument. We want to bring in something like a piano or a bass or something along those lines. So if I come down here, I can add an instrument. So if I left click on it, it's going to bring up a menu of all the things that are available to me to be able to include into here. And so for this particular one, I am going to use, let's go with the direct wave. And then I am going to choose, I'm going to do this a little bit differently. I'm going to come over to packs, instruments, keyboard. So now I'm going to come over here, drop the grand piano on here, and it'll load up that instrument into this direct wave. So now I have a grand piano that I've loaded in here. But if I were just to come into here and create just let's say a note pattern here and just punch in these 4, if I played this pattern just by itself, it's just one single note. But if I'm trying to create a melody or I'm trying to put in chords, I need to be able to tell FL Studio what notes I want it to play and when. So this is where the piano roll comes in. So when I press F7, what you'll see is it gives me this keyboard view. And so all those notes that showed up, it was just this note right here. I'm gonna delete those. I selected those. I held down Control and I left clicked and dragged to select all of them. They turned red and then I pressed delete. And so now I have just a blank keyboard that I can do whatever I want to with. So right now, let's go ahead and drop in. I'm going to Control and left click and drag around those 3 notes, and then I can stretch them out by just holding on to the left side where it turns into the double arrow, and now I have created a chord. All right, so that's the C major chord, and let's go for G. All right, so now I've created a set of chords that I can use in this new pattern that I'm creating. So I'll click back over to the playlist and I'm gonna add in that pattern of key or of the piano, keys, piano, whatever, you know what I'm saying. So now if we go back to song mode by switching between here, pressing L again, now I have the drums and the piano playing all at the same time. So here's what it sounds like together right now. All right, so if I come back out here, I might want to adjust the volume maybe on the piano a little bit so it's not overpowering, cut down that wood block a little bit more because it's just annoying. All right, so now we have a basic chord progression that's going on in the song that we're starting to create. So let's say we want to add in a bass. So I'm going to use something like a synth bass. So I'm going to press F6 and bring this up, and I'm going to, let's say, grab flex. Actually, you know what? I'm going to grab 3x oscillator, and I am going to drop this down. All right, so I think I actually just created that on top of the already existing keyboard pattern. So maybe I don't want it to be in the same pattern. Maybe I want to create a bass just on a completely separate pattern. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight this channel that was the bass. I'm going to press Control and X. So basically just copied that or cut it out, and now I'm gonna come over here. I'm gonna say find a first new empty, and then I'm gonna name this one bass, and then I'm going to press Control and V. So I just copied that bass that I just created in the piano roll, and I copied it to a new pattern. So now when we come back here, we have pattern 1 and 2, which are the drums, pattern 3, which is the piano playing the chord progression, and now we've just added in a bass. So now if we click over here, so we've created a bass, keys, and some drums. And let's say that we want to work on the sound of the bass a little bit. So I'm gonna press F6, and I am going to assign the bass to channel 6. And I'm gonna assign the keys to channel 5. So when I come over here into channel 5, I'm going to press F2. I'm gonna make sure that I name this the piano. I'm going to press F2 again over here, name this the bass, and then I can color code this if I want to. I can say right click on it, say change color, and let's say we're going to make the piano a red, and we're going to make the bass, change that color to like a yellow, or whatever color you want to call that, gold, or however you want to say it is. So now we have the piano. So let's say I want to adjust the sound of that piano a little bit. I'm going to use something called EQ here. So I'm going to come over to this right side. I've left clicked on this insert 5 where the piano's playing. You'll hear the piano. If I were to solo this by right clicking and soloing it, and I'm in the mixer at 9, channel 9. So now if I come over here to this slot on this right side, if I hit the drop down arrow, then I can come into here and I can select what's called an effect. And so I'm going to choose this fruity parametric EQ. And this brings up an EQ for me to be able to do some adjusting on the tone of the piano. All right, so the difference between what we had before and then adding in that EQ. And now if we put that all together, if we unclick that from being solo, now here's everything together. So we've made some effects on there, and now we have a basic pattern for this song. And then maybe we want to add in something additional like a sound effect. So let's say we're gonna use one of these risers. They're terrible sounding, but we'll use one anyway. So, I mean, come on. So let's use that, but we're gonna drag it and drop it this time. So it's actually an audio file that shows up inside of the playlist. And so now I have this file that shows up about midway through, and this is going to sound terrible, but we're going to use it anyway just as an example. So I'm cutting down the volume so it's not super noticeable. But I'm just using this to indicate that there's a transition that's happening, so the bass is coming in. So let me show you how to create a volume automation. So I'm going to come down here to where that little waveform looking thing is, and I'm going to come over here, say automate, and say volume. And there's going to be this purple thing that shows up, and it has a couple of points on it. If I zoom in by holding down Control and using my mouse wheel, or Alt using my mouse wheel, this thing will get a little bit bigger so that you can see what's going on. So there's these points on here. You can add points by right-clicking on it. And then you can use these points right here to either create different kinds of curves, or you could do something like this. And then I'm going to drop this off so that as soon as the bass comes in, this thing drops off. So let's turn this thing down even more. And then let's listen to what it sounds like as it comes in and then hopefully drops off fairly quickly right after the bass comes in. So let's listen to that real quick. Excuse me. Sorry. We created a volume automation just to help control that audio level that's coming in a little bit. So now you have a lot of the basic things that you need to start creating a song. So I showed you how to create patterns with samples. So we loaded up some samples into the channel rack. We also loaded those into the mixer, and then we created some patterns from that. So we had 2 patterns that we created of drums, and we used that in the playlist, and we layered those in. So you have 2 different patterns of drums that are going on. And then we loaded up, my goodness, I'm choking. And then we loaded up a piano. We used this direct wave, and I loaded it from over in this packs and instruments and keyboard, and I loaded in a grand piano. So we had a piano sound, and then we used, and that was on pattern 3, and we used the piano roll. So we brought up channel or F7, and we switched over to the piano roll. So now we have these chords that we laid in by using the pencil tool and then lengthening the notes, and we selected notes by holding Control and dragging around it, and we created a chord progression, and we put that into the playlist as well. And then we added in another instrument, which was the bass instrument, and we created a pattern for that using the piano roll as well. And then we created a transition by throwing in an audio file and then creating an automation to create the transition. So now you could go out there and build your own songs. So you could create all these different sections and layers, and you can put as many instruments in there as you want, or drum samples, or automations, or transition sounds, or whatever. And now you have all of the basic skills that you need to start putting together a song. But if you want to go a little bit deeper into the basics, I have a 3-part video series that will walk you through things like recording an instrument like an electric guitar or a bass or an acoustic guitar, or things like your own voice with a microphone, setting that up on an audio interface, or things like using a MIDI keyboard to trigger drum samples or to play MIDI instruments inside of FL Studio. Just check for the link in the description below, and I will see you in the next round.